After days of intense attacks, the United States taking out another Iranian naval target sounds like nothing particularly new. But when it's an Iranian warship sitting in international waters 4,000 kilometres from home, the first time since World War II that a US sub has torpedoed an enemy vessel, then we have good reason to call Mark Cancian. He's a retired colonel and senior advisor, you can see him now, with the Centre for Strategic and International Studies. Mark, looking forward to talking to you in just a moment after we lay out the background to this story. This video was released by the US and it shows the moment of the torpedo attack on the Iris Dina. Believed that 180 people were on board, around 30 have been rescued, but others are dead or missing. The ship was returning from a naval parade in India when it was hit in international waters off the coast of Sri Lanka. This is the first time the war in Iran has spread to the Indian Ocean, showing how the conflict is now widening far beyond the Middle East. Right, Mark Cancian now joins me, a former colonel and senior advisor with the Centre for Strategic and International Studies and International Security Program. Great to see you, Mark. Welcome. An Iranian ship sailing off the coast of Sri Lanka in the Indian Ocean. Is that fair game for the US to hit?
Well, the US government clearly thought it was. It considers itself in conflict with Iran, and part of that effort, that military effort, is against the Iranian Navy. The Iranians have threatened to close the Straits of Hormuz, and in fact, they've caused enough disruption that very little traffic is going through. The United States has expanded its field of operations against the Iranian Navy to include the Indian Ocean. This was a decision that was not made by the commander on the spot. There's no indication that he felt he was in any danger. This was a decision made in Washington.
Legalities aside, Mark, it didn't seem like the warship was taking part in active hostilities when it was hit. What's the message, though, rather, sent via these actions from the US military?
The US is sending a message to Iran that its military forces will be at risk wherever they are globally, that the United States is intent on eliminating the threat to the Gulf of the Straits of Hormuz, and that it would engage globally. I would not be surprised if we saw more of this, if there are other Iranian warships at sea around the world.
Is that another key part of this message, or the thread here, that the US message to the world is not so much in words but in actions, that they're saying they're not so bothered about the rules of engagement at this point? There's nowhere safe for the Iranian naval vessels?
Well, there's no question they're sending a message that there's no place safe for Iranian naval vessels. And the administration has been quite clear that they will take whatever actions are necessary to protect the United States as they see it. So this is not all that surprising for this administration.
Does the Iran Navy have much left in terms of hardware at this point, or are they a spent force?
Well, it's mostly a spent force. All of their large warships are likely destroyed or sunk, but they've built a large fleet of small vessels. These vessels were intended to drop mines in the Straits of Hormuz, to harass and potentially block them. Some of those may have survived, and I expect that the United States will be sweeping them up in the next couple of days.
So that's the lay of the land of the situation on water. What is the status now in terms of the fight for airspace over Iran? Does Iran have air defence left at this point?
It doesn't look like they have much of an air defence left. Their air defences were badly beaten in June in the 12-day war, and then the United States and Israel put a lot of effort into suppressing them in this conflict. The United States, particularly in the first 2 days, I think used a lot of long-range missiles to take down what remained of their air defenses. But now the United States says that it has air superiority over Iran, and they've demonstrated that by flying, for example, B-52s over Iran. B-52s, of course, very large uh, legacy aircraft, carry a lot of bombs, but very vulnerable. And the United States has also flown drones, MQ-9 Reapers, which are like Predators. They're like large propeller aircraft, and also very vulnerable.
And yet, Mark, Iran is still firing missiles at its neighbours despite its situation with its air defence. They are returning fire on Israel, who's been firing relentlessly on Iran from the air. What's your best guess at how long Iran can now hold out?
Well, there are two questions there. One is how long their missiles can hold out. And apparently their missile inventory is much reduced. The number of missiles that they launch is relatively low. It's down by 75%, according to the Pentagon. On the other hand, Iran can hold out as long as they can endure the punishment. We don't have boots on the ground, so we can't march into the capital and force a surrender. They will have to decide that on their own. Historically, air campaigns have not been successful in overthrowing regimes, but they have had success in changing policies. And that's what we may end up seeing. That is, new leaders in the old regime who decide to accept different policies.
Yeah, it's an interesting point we arrive at. If Iran has no navy, no air defence, heavily degraded communications and a weakened leadership, are we necessarily any closer, though, do you think, to the end of the regime?
Well, that's very hard to say because we don't know what the regime is at this point. They have procedures for choosing successors, but of course, they've lost a lot of their senior leadership. We'll know more as the next couple of days go on to see what coalesces in terms of a government in Iran and what their attitude might be.
Mark, aside from the Gulf states and Israel, Iran is also now firing on Turkey. In what counts as another escalation on Wednesday, NATO air defences destroyed a missile heading from Iran into Turkish airspace. This is the first time Iran has fired a missile towards NATO territory in the current conflict. Mark, it's easy to get desensitised to big moments in these times, but this sounds like a pretty big deal. Is it to you?
Well, not yet. This is one missile and didn't actually get into Turkey. It might have been a fluke. It may have been just one missile as a warning, but it is something that everyone's going to be watching, particularly the Turks, to see if this is the first wave of a series of attacks on Turkey or whether this was a one-off, just a warning or even a mistake.
All right, Mark. US Defence Secretary Pete Hegseth was at the mic today, and we are going to play you a little of Pete's work here so we can get his thoughts and then yours. Here is Mr. Hegseth giving his thoughts on the status of the US and Israeli conflict with Iran.
We are only 4 days into this, and the results have been incredible. Historic, really. Only the United States of America could lead this, only us. But when you add the Israeli Defense Forces, a devastatingly capable force, the combination is sheer destruction for our radical Islamist Iranian adversaries. They are toast, and they know it. Or at least, soon enough, they will know it.
Iran is toast. As a former military man, retired colonel, how do the words of Pete Hegseth make you feel, Mark?
Well, it's important to separate two strands. One is the military strand. And Hegseth can rightly be proud of what the U.S. military has done. And in fact, what they've done is very impressive. Just to give you a little sense, the United States and Israel have established air dominance over Iran over the course of maybe 4 days. The Russians have been at war with the Ukrainians for 4 years, and they have not been able to establish air superiority. So that is a quite significant accomplishment, what we've been able to do, hitting many targets, nuclear missiles. But that's not a political end. And whether these military successes lead to a political success, that's a difficult question. and not really one that the Pentagon can answer.
I'm old enough to remember the press conferences given by Norman Schwarzkopf in the early days of the Gulf War, the shock and awe era. How does the military community view the Secretary of Defence and his language and his approach to his job?
Well, the Secretary is unique, I think, in his approach and his demeanor. The commentariat, the commentators, experts really don't like Hegseth at all. This extreme rhetoric they find distasteful. On the other hand, if you go out to the troops, many of them find this very attractive. They find his attitude about a warrior ethos, about lethality, about toughness, that resonates with the troops. So you get different answers depending on who you talk to.
Yeah, it's a good point about the troops being the boots on the ground. If Iran is as toast as Pete says, do you think we'll see US boots on the ground? Is the military in position now, after all we've talked about, to send troops onto Iranian soil?
Yeah, no and no to the two questions. First, there are no U.S. ground forces in the theater, and there are none on the way. So you're not going to see anything. Even if the execute order were given today, you wouldn't see troops on the ground for 30 days, and wouldn't see a large force for maybe 90 or 100 days. That takes a lot of time. And the administration, of course, has been adamant in its strategy documents that it's not going to fight foreign wars with boots on the ground. So I don't think that you're going to see that, both for strategic reasons and also for the fact that we're not seeing it on the ground.
One more report I want to run past you before we leave. Jennifer Griffin on X, a Fox News analyst, pretty well connected on defence matters, it seems, reports that thousands of Iraqi Kurds have launched a ground offensive in Iran. That's what she is saying US officials have told Fox News. The report's been denied by the Kurdish regional government in Iraq and also by Iran. But if it did turn out to be true, and that connection and that report is true, what does it tell us about where we are in this war, or where it could be headed?
Well, as viewers probably know, the Kurds are a large ethnic group in the Middle East. They do not have a homeland of their own. They're divided between Iran, Iraq, Turkey, and Syria. Each one of those areas has had tensions with the home government, and in fact have harbored insurgents. So there was a Iranian Kurdish insurgency group based in Iraq. And it could be that they have now surged over the border, sensing chaos and an opportunity. It's unlikely that they would go very far. The Kurds are in the northwest corner and not a large minority. They may just be trying to take that over, but it would add to the chaos, and it would be a tremendous challenge to the Iranian government. They would have to deploy their ground forces. Not clear whether the United States would permit that. The United States might go after those ground forces.
It's a complicated puzzle. Mark Cancian, a former colonel and senior advisor with the Centre for Strategic and International Studies, International Security Program. Fascinating to get your thoughts at a truly delicate moment in this conflict. Thanks so much for being with us on DW News.
Thanks for having me on the program.
Big thanks to Mark Cancian for joining us. You too, please hit us up in the comments down below. That's where we would like to hear your thoughts, your questions on Pete Hegseth or the state of the war. And if you like this content, you can subscribe to the DW News channel like 6 million other people already have. Bye for now.